Does this, oh, there we go. All right. Hi, everybody. How are we doing this evening? So hi, everyone. I want to welcome everybody here to ANHD's 12th Annual Community Development Conference, and this is our fourth event. I'm Barika Williams. For those who don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of ANHD, and good to see so many of you in person and out in community. So what we have here is how we have reimagined and transitioned our sort of traditional conference series, go to Midtown, be in a hotel, and instead brought it to our communities, talking with our members, with our groups, getting out of the spaces that sometimes folks bring everybody to, and taking this to what is really our core as ANHD, which is our neighborhoods, our membership, and the groups that do the work on the ground in communities and spaces. So today's conversation, if you're, hopefully you know where you are, is on housing, exploring the intersections of housing, homelessness, and criminalization. So this is going to be a conversation. I do want to say I'm really excited, also very proud of the team for having this conversation. It's not something that folks always want to or willing to. Housing spaces sometimes shy away from doing. But I think we all know how intersectional these issues are, especially for people who experience them. And so we, especially led by some of the team, really said, let's push into some of the harder, more complicated conversations. So I want to thank the ANHD staff, the board members, and the sponsors who have supported making the conference possible. In particular, our movement leader sponsor, Citi, our community convener sponsor, New York Community Bank, our neighborhood defender sponsors, Goldman Sachs and Wells Fargo, and our lead law sponsor, Goldstein Hall, and then our ANHD board of directors who sponsored as a group and a cohort as well. So where we are, I want to thank the Schoenberg Center for Research in Black Culture for hosting us this evening. The Schoenberg Center is one of the New York Public Library's research libraries. It's a leading global and worldwide cultural institution devoted to research, preservation, and exhibition of materials focused on African American, African diaspora, and African experiences. So we're really appreciative of being here and getting to host this event. And we, as some of the teams, saw this space, and you'll get to see a little bit more of it later, and we were like, well, this is a perfect match, like you guys are going to see, because the topic was being discussed, and we saw this space and just knew we had to figure out how to put them together. I want to thank Appreciations for Food Trends, our caterer this evening when we go back to the reception, and that's an MWBE business, and throughout our conference series, we're actually prioritizing putting our vendor dollars to MWBE's Black, local, community, small business spaces, and so tonight is no exception. I also want to thank Sayuri and Catherine, who are somewhere in here, and who are providing Spanish language interpretation tonight. So if you're a Spanish speaker and you haven't already received a translation headset, make sure to come and find them and see them. So if anybody doesn't have one, just put a hand up, but I know they're trying to catch people as they're coming in. Last but not least, I want to thank, where are they? Because I'm going to make them put their hands up. I want to thank Will Depot and Lucy Block. Yes, there you go. I was like, yeah, because I'm going to make them put their hands up. Yes, please. Lucy is ANHD's Senior Research and Data Associate, and Will is ANHD's Senior Campaign Organizer, who collaborated with our members and with the organizations that you're going to see to put this event on. And so we as a team kind of like rotate. Each one of these is a different little group, right? So it's a lot of work for folks. And they really did a lot to bring together and think about how these topics are intertwined and often inseparable. But so too often get treated and siloed in movement spaces, in policy spaces, in agencies, and all of the ways that we sort of break these into different camps. We're really grateful tonight for our speakers, Tracie Adams, Marcus Moore, and Robert Ehrenberg, who are going to speak with us, and then so pleased to have and grateful to have New York City public advocate Jumaane Williams, who's going to be moderating the conversation. And for those who don't know, ANHD and Jumaane go back for many, many years. So one of Jumaane's original and first positions was as a tenant organizer at ANHD member organization Tenant and Neighbors. We worked with him throughout his time in the city council. We continue to work with he and his team now in the public advocate's office, but it's pretty rare to have an elected official who both has done this work on the ground as a part of their career and then continues to think about, engage, bring in, and uplift it in the work that they're doing once they're in elected office. And so both appreciating all of the things that Jumaane has done as a legislator to advance these issues, but then as a worker, as a person, as a human, as a dad, as all of that, right, to activate and really talk about this work. And I say that as a person who has been outside of the streets of Brooklyn in the middle of COVID at Black Lives Matter rallies with Jumaane, right? That's why I say it's the totality. After the panel, we're going to welcome up cellist Jacob Cohen to the stage. And so just everybody stay put after the panel's done, because you'll hear, we'll do an introduction and then you'll hear a performance. And then afterwards, we're going to, we hope everybody can stay and join us for a reception after the panel. You're going to have the opportunity to view Making Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration. So this is the exhibit that is out here. And once we go back out, actually the library is then closed to the public, so we'll be able to sort of move through the exhibit space on our own. And it really explores the impact of the US prison system captured in contemporary visual art. I will say it was the thing that there was a bunch of us who were okay, so how do we, even though this is not our thing, how do we bring other people to see this? And we've talked a lot as a staff team about how we bring in art and creation and expression to really also convey so many of the things that we encounter and that we work on day to day. I will note that one change is that we were going to have reception remarks by Assemblymember Latrice Walker, and unfortunately she won't be able to join us. She had a death in the family, so she won't be here for the reception. So you may see me later at the reception, but we may just all get to converse and circle up as a group. But then lastly, I want to introduce the panel and the topic of the issue. I want to bring up Bea de la Torre, Chief Philanthropy Officer at Trinity Wall Street, to come up to the stage. And again, so just thinking about how we have people who we partner with in different ways over time. Before, Bea is now a key leader at shaping Trinity Wall Street's foundation and grant-making strategy in New York City, which includes housing and homelessness, racial justice, mission, real estate development, and leadership development. And they work on all four of these pillars. But she also has this amazing, robust experience in the field and in community development, including working at HPD and at SBS previously. And so is somebody that, again, we have now gotten to interact with as organizations and individuals in different ways, and now has landed in this amazing role where she can really support a lot of the work that we are now doing as organizations on these various different topics, and is a person who now is in a role to oversee sort of helping us bridge some of these conversations. So really appreciate where she is, and thank you, Bea.
Thank you so much, Marika, and good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. It's so great to be here. I really want to thank ANHD for convening this conversation, because we don't talk about the intersection of homelessness, housing insecurity, and the criminal justice system enough. And I will tell you, I've been working in the affordable housing field for, at this point, close to 2 decades. And it really wasn't until fairly recently, truly when I joined Trinity Church Wall Street 5 years ago, that I started deeply thinking about this intersection. And now, I think to myself, I can't believe this is not something that we think from the get-go. It's so incredibly obvious. It was so in front of our eyes, but I think we're just so siloed that we don't allow those conversations to happen. So kudos really to ANHD and the staff for putting together this conversation today, and for all of you for being here. As many of you know, there are thousands and thousands of New Yorkers that are just basically cycling between prison, jails, and the shelter system. We estimate that that number might be around 15,000, maybe even 20,000 that are just caught in that pernicious cycle. And we also know that most of them are come from communities of color. So, many just don't have a place to go to live in when they're released and they try to reenter in their community. So the only option for many is shelter. And we know that people incarcerated once are 7 times more likely to experience homelessness than the general population. That's just a crazy number that is very important for us to know, because that is what we need to fight against. And I will say this cycle is not by coincidence. We really have created a system that leaves people with criminal justice involvement very limited options in the housing front. Although there's great organizations that really focus on this issue and have been doing this for decades. I'll name a few: the Fortune Society, Osborne Association, Our Children, Providence House. They all do an amazing job, but there's just not near enough of the housing that's needed to house the people that are coming out of the criminal justice system or have had justice involvement. And also very important, when they're coming out, the sense of dignity as they re-enter in the community is something that has been lost, and it's something that is really important for us to think about. And I also want to say that in terms of the housing options, I want to specifically call out that even out of public housing, there's issues with people with criminal justice systems, and that is just so incredibly wrong, and it's something that we really need to fight for. It's also no coincidence that many individuals experiencing homelessness end up in the criminal justice system. Homelessness has been criminalized in our city for a long time, let's be real. People who are in shelter report that they have 10 times as many contacts with the police and people who are sheltered. And there have been, administrations that have been better at this than others, or less bad, let me put it that way. But often we do still rely on the response when somebody's having a mental health episode that's unsheltered to just call the police. So we call on the enforcement, and many times this is what ends up in the criminalization of homelessness. And I want to be fair and say that there's many street outreach teams that do a really great job. They've been trained in trauma-informed care, but still there's just not enough. And it is something that we really need to focus on. So what do we need to do? So the first thing is really we need to focus on breaking these 2 cycles. And we at Trinity Church are very intentional of calling it the cycle of mass incarceration and the cycle of mass homelessness. And these cycles are intergenerational. They've been happening for a long time, and we really need to keep our eye on breaking those 2. We also need to understand that they're not just linked, they actually feed off each other, and that this is where the systemic issues come in. Mass incarceration and mass homelessness often are also discussed as separate social issues, each with their ecosystems of activists, and experts, but in practice they're highly interconnected. So it's really such a great thing to be here to talk about them together as housers. So I think the first step really is just to acknowledge the link and decide that we need to do something about it. And I'm sure everyone in this room is there already. There's just such good work being done on this front, and again, I think a conversation like this really moves that forward. But then we have to move to actual solutions, right? So I'm gonna lay out 3 at very high levels, and they're complex, but first, we really need to ensure that justice-involved individuals have stable homes. And we need to do that by ending permanent exclusions from government-supported housing, and I'm referring to NYCHA there too, ending discrimination in the private market. We know that this is such a big issue. We also need to fix the rental assistance voucher system to allow for more opportunities for people that have criminal justice involvement to be able to have access to the vouchers. And then we also need to leverage public funds to create new housing to meet their needs. So specifically, housing in the way the Fortune Society, again, does it, and the Osborne Association specifically for this population. Second, we really need to develop a coordinated reentry system that works across government agencies and is held accountable to the well-being and whole dignity of the person. I fear that that is something we have lost, and it is something that's incredibly important. So it's not just the housing, it's also the other aspects of reentering and making sure that dignity is at the top of the list when we're thinking about how that person is coming into the community. And then, I think we're all here because we know that we need to continue to push our local, federal, and state systems to recognize that the lives of our neighbors who are involved in the criminal justice system are equally as valuable as the lives of others, and that therefore they merit the time and resources to fund alternatives to incarceration and support their reentry to access safe and quality housing. So advocacy is absolutely key here. We at Trinity Church are so grateful to be able to work with incredible partners such as ANHD and many of our grantees in this effort, and I look forward to continuing to work on it with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bea. And I'm already thinking about things. I'm like, all right, so why don't I bring our moderator and our speakers up to the stage. So let me bring our panelists up so you all can take your time, come up here and get settled. Yeah, I'm going to put Jumaane on the end. Perfect. Got it? Okay. All right. So thank you, Bea. Thank you for the work that Trinity Wall Street is doing to support this work, but also to support us all being a little bit brave and a little bit courageous to have these kind of conversations and to push this work forward. And now I'm going to turn it over to this great panel that is in our public advocate, Jumaane Williams' hands, and excited about the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings. Love and light, everybody. How you doing? You all right? You about to have a great conversation? So everybody, just really quick, all together, I want everyone to just breathe real quick. It's been a pretty tough week. We're not going to get into stuff, but I know there's a lot of tension out there, so I just want to make space and grace for everybody as we're moving through some tough times. Yes? As I mentioned, my name is Jumaane Williams. I'm the public advocate of the City of New York. Thank you for the great words from Barika. I really appreciate it. Just to note, before Tenants and Neighbors, I was in the Flatbush Development Corporation, and before that, I organized my first building about 20 years ago as a tenant organizer. But we have some great folks here on this panel, some of whom I've worked with, all of whom are either affected and are advocates as well when it comes to housing. So really quick, we have Tracie Adams. To my immediate left is a leader. Did I get that right? Sometimes I get right and left wrong. So this is my left, right? Yes, okay. You gotta do this, all right. Tracie Adams is a leader with Vocal New York's Positive Leaders Union based in Rochester, New York. Tracie is also a member of Release Aging People in Prison. Bobby Ehrenberg. Bobby Ehrenberg is the Queens Community Leader for Release Aging People in Prison, the Assistant Director for the Redemption Center Incorporated, and member of the Clemency Collective. And Marcus Moore is a longtime member and leader of Picture the Homeless. You know, as was mentioned, we're talking about the intersection of housing, homelessness, and criminal justice, criminalization. I prefer to say criminal legal system, but criminalization, I think it's really important that we have this conversation. And as Bea was saying, it's strange. I guess not strange, but it's glaring that it hasn't happened as often as it should. You know, as people are returning home, the two things I believe everybody would agree on that is needed is the ability to work and gain income and the ability to be housed. And those are probably the two things that we make hardest for people returning home. Surprise, surprise. I always think our systems are by design. That's probably another panel, so I'll leave that there. But it is why it's so difficult to untangle it, because I think it's by design in so many ways. But you know, there's different ways that I think those things intersect. One is just people who are unhoused, who have day-to-day interactions with law enforcement, or people connected to law enforcement in ways that other people may not. And as was discussed, the difficulties of being able to gain housing, which causes a vicious cycle. And in fact, as was pointed out, many of our voucher systems and systems that we have to place people in housing very specifically say, if you have been in touch with the criminal legal system, you can't have housing, which is absurd. So the first question I want to ask, and we'll just go down the line, is really, in those two buckets, how are the members and the people that you know who are unhoused or homeless or trying to search for housing, in those two buckets, how has it affected them in a real world, just so we can set the stage? You can go ahead. First. Yeah, everybody got a mic.
Oh, we all got
Yeah, we all. They did it right. Everybody got a mic. Okay, go ahead, Marcus.
Okay, check 1, 2. So let me kick us off. So, as you heard, the councilman, our speaker here, moderator, just mentioned.
I've been called worse. It's all right, man.
Oh, okay, okay. So, members of Picture the Homeless over the years, ladies and gentlemen, we have mastered the system, and a lot of us have learned how to live, on the street in different places. People have, after learning how the sister system is used and how it conduct its business within community, a lot of Picture the Homeless members, have decided to just, over the years and even now, some of us just got housing after all these years, are now experiencing indoors and what that feels like. A lot of us have over the years has experienced abandoned houses, living in abandoned houses, and so yours truly here, what I'm saying? I choose, why members in my Conrad other organization over the years was practicing living on the street and sleeping on the street. I was using something that the real estate people do not want New Yorkers to know about, and that's called adverse possession. And so when the house is a sore eye and it's not being used, that's in public domain. I can use that, ladies and gentlemen, but I don't want to take all the time up because I can go on and on. I still got two folks right here that got to speak. So I'll stop right there.
All right, thank you. Bobby, you're going to?
Sure, well, I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody, for coming. It's good to see you here tonight. We have a broken system. I mean, as soon as I walked in the door, there was an elderly person just sleeping on the street. I look at that, and that hurts me. That bothers me. And I'm sure you have the same feelings when you see that. My situation is that I've been formerly incarcerated. I did 30 years on a 50-year-to-life sentence. I was, by the grace of God, on Governor Cuomo's last day of office, granted executive clemency for excellence in what I did within the institution when I was incarcerated. So this was a shock because, thank you. About 2 years, I've been doing the best I can as far as speaking, talking, giving back, advocating, volunteering, et cetera, et cetera. The whole thing is with that situation, executive clemency is like finding a needle in a haystack. I mean, even if you reach the epitome of everything you could do, college degrees, write programs, write math programs, new inmate organization programs, this was very sudden. August 23rd, he resigns at 12 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, they call me down to disciplinary. I think I got problems. Something went wrong. I'm going into handcuffs. I'm going to wind up in Attica somewhere. They come out, and the lieutenant is shaking her head and says, I don't know, this must be Christmas or something. You got your ID card? I hand her my ID card, I stand up, and she says, I hereby have to inform you that you were granted executive clemency. Bang. My knees buckled. I was given my life back. But now, with 30 years of everything I was doing there, the preparation process to be re-entered into society was within 3 weeks. I had to set up housing, where to go, et cetera, et cetera. So, You go down, your counselors catch wind of this. We need someplace, you have to go someplace. We're just gonna put you in for a shelter. That's the way the system works. That's why it's broken, that's why it needs to be fixed. And you're like, well, I don't have anything out there anymore. And it's pretty much, they don't care. It's now to wash their hands free. You leave the door open, you're coming back. As we know, recidivism for people going into shelters and contact with police is just off the charts. It's enormous. And the shelters that they sent you to are not safe havens after you've been in a cage and situated in that situation, to come out and just not really have a place that is a safe haven. Within my institution, the Redemption Center, we do transitional housing. We accept other people too with mental health issues, addiction problems, because they're living out on the street. If we get a call, I'll do what I can do for any individual coming in. Just to make a point that a lot of times we need to do the footwork. We need to be hands-on. We need to come up with solutions and use actions instead of just saying words. If I walk down to the E train in South Richmond Hill and they're laying there, the best that I can do, and I've done this, is hand out 5, 10, 20, even $100 bill. That I really don't have, because that's how adamant I feel about these individuals that are misplaced in society. In the United States, I mean, the best country in the world, people. What's going on? I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much. And you're still here. You're still out. So congratulations on that. I know it's difficult. Thank you. Tracie, when you answer the question, I also want to add in the, why do you think it's so difficult for the intersection of these conversations to happen more often?
Well, listen, when I was incarcerated, what made my journey a little easier, my daughter did my whole bed with me. And I met a lot of women in there that didn't have family at all. So when I came out, I didn't have to go to a shelter. I went to my daughter's home. Even though it wasn't my home, still considered homeless. Because no matter if you're sleeping on somebody's couch or renting a room for them, you still consider homeless. It ain't your home. You ain't the type of the lease. So with the support from my children is what got me through. But what really changed my life around was 2020. I lost 11 family members. One of them was my mother. And I couldn't come and bury my mother because I'm HIV positive. I've been positive this October 31st on Halloween, 23 years, undetectable. Housing is healthcare. And I'm only saying that because there's a lot of people that won't talk about their status. When you're in prison, you know what it was like for me to walk around with my HIV medication and nobody know? It's for real. I had to keep it hidden because everybody's not educated and knowledgeable. So I came out and did what I had to do. Come here and fight for my people. So a lot of people on the street homeless. They didn't ask to be like that. Nobody woke up and said, when I grow up, I'm gonna be homeless. When I grow up, I'm gonna go to prison. When I grow up, I'm gonna do drugs. Ain't nobody thought that. We thought about Barbie and Ken. Because if you're 61 like me, that's all we had was Barbie and Ken, okay? So moving forward. So now I fight. So September 26, 2020, I came out publicly that I was HIV positive to change the narrative and the stigma. Because I'm not gonna allow you to talk about my family and my friends. I stand in front line for them because they scared to stand on the front line because the narrative and the stigma about being positive, being homeless. So, being positive, I couldn't even go to a shelter. So now I'm fighting for housing. I'm fighting for a voucher upstate for everybody. It's called Rest of State Housing. I'm fighting for everybody. HAVP, that's a housing access voucher program. Everybody deserves a home. You can't tell me nobody don't want a home. Everybody deserves a home. But see, this is the thing. People are putting people in places, and you said that you put them in a home, but you wouldn't live there. You wouldn't even put your dog there. Housing is health care. If you're gonna give housing, you gotta give me the mental health to go with the housing so I could maintain my housing. so I can know how to function like y'all say normal people, which I don't know what normal is, so that people be productive. Because we have to teach them. We just throw them in somewhere and feel and act like they're supposed to know. They don't know. We need to sit down and educate them. What is so hard? But these shelters need to go. Shelters are a $1 billion business, and shelters is designed for people coming out of prison to fail. So if you do the math and look it up, how many people violate within 90 days to 6 months living in a shelter or your reentry program? It's a joke. It's not real. It's something that's designed by people that I don't believe that was ever incarcerated. Everybody sitting here quiet, just think about it. Have you ever did a state bid? I ain't talking about county jail. State bid, when you're in a room with 59 other inmates, and you have to undress in front of them, take a shower in front of them. Do you know what that's like? Don't ever want you to never feel what that's like. So I fight, so no one else has to feel what that's like. Me and Bobby do this every day. I fight in my sleep for people. This is real. And I need people to get housing. Y'all paying money for these shelters. You could pay for somebody's rent for a month. You gotta be kidding me. You know how much they make for a person in a shelter? $2,000 to $4,000 per head, per month. Do the math. 12 months in a year. We could have been bought a whole bunch of projects, develop houses. So we need to get together, because let me tell you, each one of us in here, we are a snap away from being homeless. Let the wrong person get in office, and we all be sitting up here crying, looking for a home. What's your next question?
Well, thank you very much for that. And you're still here. Congratulations, doing the work. Marcus, how do we go about making sure people see the humanity? I think that's missing sometimes. We talk about homeless, and it's almost like nameless faces of folks. How do we go about making sure folks see the humanity in the struggle that's happening? I think if we could put some of that back in, some of the conversation gets a little easier.
Okay, so I think you said something about how do we help people to see the humanity in people who are unhoused? Is that
Yes.
what you said? Yeah. So that's a good question, because over the years, traveling and advocating, for housing and different things and homeless rights, Picture the Homeless have been really a blessing for me in disguise, because it helped me to be able to express myself artistically. And so throughout the years of traveling around the country, I gotten the chance to write about the things that goes on in the life of a homeless man, meaning myself. And so throughout the years, I got a chance to tell my story and help people that have vision on what it is for you to try to survive the night. Let me say that again. Trying to survive the night. Okay? And so a lot of times you have to have a story to be able to help people from this gated community to be able to understand what these folks over here is going through. And so throughout my years of being a satirist with Picture the Homeless, I often have dressed up in costumes. I sung songs, write poetry, spoken words, to be able to help people get a visual New York City on the life of someone that's struggling in the community. That's it.
Bobby, and you said, it's broken, we got to fix it. I actually don't think it's broken. I think it's operating how they designed it to operate. That's just me. So we just gotta put a whole new paradigm in there. But how do we? Just similar question, a little change. But how do we get folks to accept that we need to have a category of vouchers and assistance for people who are formerly incarcerated, folks who are criminally legally involved? Because usually once you mention that, people start looking the other way or thinking that the thoughts that people go into people's head are just not a good one. So how do we go about getting people to understand that? And what's weird is that I said we know that this is what is needed so people can live lives and not go back, yet it's the thing that we prevent them from getting.
Well, I agree with you 100% when I say it's broken. It's broken for the downtrodden, but it works for the system. It doesn't work for the taxpayers, et cetera, but it's working for somebody. I agree with you 100% on that. So we identify the problem and we try to come up with solutions. The solutions are not easy because everything is always pushed in a narrative of dangerousness, sickness, stay away from this. And you know, it's part, and I hate to say it, it's part of human nature for a lot of people that are ignorant to anything in that situation, that they can look down on another individual just makes them feel a little better. We need to change that narrative. We need to awaken people like we're doing here. We're making an effort here. But like I said before, a lot of times you have to go out and you have to do one-on-one. With the system itself, the way it's designed, it's the revolving door. There's one program up in Austin, it's associated with Hudson Link for higher education and prison. They introduce in different institutions in that region, the Hudson Valley region, college programs, AA programs, BS programs, and there's even a master's program to be had right now. And maybe an extension too of another PA or BA or master's over in Sullivan. I'm not really sure. But education is your most powerful rehabilitative tool, period. You know, whatever they want to give you self-serves them in there. You need to take this, ART, or you need to take ASAT, or you need to do this, and you sit in an environment where nobody really cares. So that's the design. But to go further, with Hudson Link, they have a partnership subsidiary with them called New Beginnings, which is exactly what they do. But they only encompass the people that were in their program, their college program. Upon release, transitional housing, you have shelters, you have different levels, you have halfway house. These are considered three-quarter houses. They actually outright buy the property instead of rent. A lot of these transitional houses are all rented. They refurnish it, they fill it with every commodity and convenience to make an individual safe and a great nurturing environment. They give them case managers. They bring them to DSS. They get their benefits. They get them on their feet. We have other institutions, you know, and I really don't agree with some of these bills that they passed. They just passed the bill recently called Clean Slate. They might as well keep that. That doesn't work. What you need right away when you come out is a clean slate from that. You don't need a parole officer breathing down your neck telling you can't do this, you have to go here, you can't have a driver's license, make sure you report at this time or whatever. And it's really difficult. I mean, that's why I say it's broken.
Maybe we need clean slate and, as opposed to take it away. Maybe we can add some stuff to it, like you're saying.
Well, expansion, yeah. You know, programs like that, it's not easy. At least somebody's doing something up there with that, you know. At least down here, you know, besides the shelters, and Tracie's right, you know, you might as well just keep your stuff with you when you go to the shower, because when you come back to your bunk, that's gone. Whatever, you come from an environment where the code is if somebody puts a hand on you or takes something from you and you don't act, well, then you're finished in that environment. You're really shunned, stigmatized, or whatever. So the same mentality, which is hard to really shake after you've done 20, 25, 32 years, 37 years, brings you to that shelter like that. And it's just really a sad situation that we need to improve. You know, we have a crisis right now. I understand that in New York, housing, right? Everybody should have the right to housing.
I agree with that. I agree 100%. And Tracie, I think what you described a little bit when you were speaking is the need for supportive housing, particularly for folks. And we have a subset, and it's not as much as everybody thinks, but the subset of the most chronically homeless people have sometimes substance abuse, mental health issues that need to be addressed, and they need supportive housing. So you can just speak a little bit more of how important supportive housing is, because even when we get quote unquote affordable housing, supportive housing is not even as much as that category as we need.
Well, supportive housing, people need that. I mean, I had a support system, and everybody don't have that. And a lot of times, a person just wants somebody to say, I'm there for you. I got your back. It's not hard. And then it gives a person the drive and the motivation to continue forward to do things. But every time you go do something, somebody shoots you down, you're going to stop. Supportive housing is a big thing. You know, I mean, everybody designs it different ways. Supportive housing to me will be people that are supportive about what I'm doing, about where I'm going, you know, that I could talk to, that's going to point me in the right direction, is not going to have me go to a place that is unlivable, uninhabitable.
So you're not even necessarily saying substance abuse. It's not like you're saying some kind of coach to help you navigate, particularly if you're just coming back home, which would make sense if you haven't been in the system outside for a little while. Maybe somebody to help navigate that system for you to help you a little bit.
Yeah, because listen, I'm born and raised here. I ain't been here 20-something years. I came here and had to ask the young lady when I got off Amtrak, how do I get outside? Because they changed everything. So just imagine somebody be going 5 or 10 years. You need somebody to navigate you, to help you. But we got to change the narrative, the way people think about us that come home from prison, okay? I did my time. My crime will never change. I've changed as an individual. I deserve housing. I left Syracuse and went to Rochester, and I couldn't get an apartment. Know why? Because they did a criminal background. See, this is another thing. You want to give us housing, but you didn't take away the little box. So now it's a criminal background check. Okay, so if you take away the criminal background check, I still can't get housing because I've been incarcerated. I don't have a credit score. So that's how they're getting us, with the credit score. So if it ain't the criminal background, it's the credit score. So, I mean, come on. We don't win. And then if you want to give us something, then you want to treat us different. You want to give us the apartment you want us to have, that we're not good enough to live amongst everybody else. You know what I mean? Who you decide where I should go? How should I live? I paid my debt to society. I came out and I got to pay restitution. That's cash. Okay? Then I go to the DHS system, and they only give $440. They've been doing that for 35 years. This is outside the 5 boroughs. See, I want to explain something to everyone here. What happens in upstate New York is different what happens in the 5 boroughs. And I've been fighting for that for a long time. Whatever y'all eat in New York City, we don't get that in upstate. Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo, we do not get it at all. We don't have a voucher. We don't even have a lot of things that y'all have. When I was coming home from Albion Correctional Facility, they had a binder this big for New York City for services. You know what the binder looked like for going to Syracuse and Rochester? This big. Okay? So I'm fighting for the whole state. You know, I've been born and raised in the city. City eats. City never sleeps. Go outside the 5 boroughs, it's a total different world. If you've never been outside of the 5 boroughs, we do not move like you. We don't get the same services you get. We get treated a whole lot different, especially if we formerly incarcerated individuals. So if we're going to change something, we need to change it all across, but really upstate, especially where the prisons are at, upstate, where I'm at, okay? Right across the street. So my people need support all the way around. You understand? Not in the shelter. Let me come home to a studio apartment. Let me do what I got to do. Give me a chance. You ain't giving me a chance in the shelter because I'm still in prison. I got to get up in the morning, take all my stuff and go out and come back at a certain time, or if not, I miss that bed. And if I miss that bed, I'm violated by parole. Okay. I'm in prison. I do the ASAC program because I got caught with drugs. Okay? Completed the ASAP program, got a certificate. Parole tells me to go to drug and alcohol and get an evaluation. You know what the people tell me? Oh, you need to come to group 4 times a week. So now I got to go to group, but parole wants me to find a job. But I got to go to group. I can't even get an apartment. Ain't no time in the day for me to do this. And then I got to report and do a urine test for parole and the program that I go to. All it's about is money.
Sound like a setup to me.
That's set up to fail. That's why I was trying to win the Powerball so I could buy more housing. Yeah, in California he won in
They always win in California. They always win. But you know, Marcus, I think Bobby had touched on like the feeling that folks have of dangerousness, which if you are and have been in the criminal legal system, is an automatic fear that comes. And I appreciate Bobby adding some color to the panel. But even if you have, if you add on the layers of being black and brown and immigrant, that even goes even higher, the feelings of dangerousness. So how do we deal with combating that initial feeling that we can't let people be housed next to us because they're going to be dangerous, or what they did is dangerous? How do we help push that back? And this is for Marcus, but anyone can speak after you.
It clear. You said, how do we get around the narrative of danger of
Homeless people are dangerous. People who come home from being incarcerated are dangerous. How do we better push back on that?
how we push back on that? Well, that's a good question. How do we push back on that? Well, I'm gonna say, you know, throughout the years, right? I have been blessed to be able to, you know, learn a lot, and you know, so much have happened throughout the years, and so a lot of people might remember stop and frisk, right? That was a big issue in our community at that time, and so, but I could also remember that Picture the Homeless, and I think, oh man. Civil Liberty Union, Civil Liberty.
NYCLU, New York City
Yes.
Civil Liberties Union.
If I'm not mistaken, we was irritated about the same issue that Tracie was talking about, and I believe that at the time it used to be a group that used to be called Communities for Police Reform.
CPR.
CPR, New York City. And so, as time went on, we started noticing that people coming home from being incarcerated was being discriminated for housing. You couldn't live, you could not be in the projects with this particular relative because the relative that was coming home was formerly incarcerated. So Picture the Homeless, at the time, ladies and gentlemen, we got together with allies, supporters, and we started working on that. But let me tell you what happens when you by yourself advocating for certain things, when it's not popular. Let me say that again. When it's not popular, you by yourself. And then what happens? It fizzled off. You know what I'm saying? But I'm so glad that this subject is happening again. And so, with that being said, I think you, and you, we all have to get together because this is a problem in our community. We have to revise some of these talks. We not reinventing the wheel. It's been started. It's been created. But when it's not, I guess the language is sexy. People, ain't interested in working on it. Nobody don't know nothing, So what I'm basically saying, New York City, we have to take these same subjects and topics and issues and bring them to the forefront. We have to talk about it, how it was already started, and we need to continue to give credit to where some of these talks and these campaigns came from, and bring these talks back to some of the organizations that's popping up now that's working on these same issues, from 10, 20 years ago when organizations was by themselves. They was by themselves working on these same issues.
So I know we're at time, but I want to get a response to that question about how we push back on the instinctual that people have of dangerousness, which is why we shouldn't do this. And then I'm going to have a quick wrap-up question. So, Bobby and Tracie, if you want to add to that.
Well, little group think here. You know, the whole thing is, you know, I have to put it out there, you have to change the narrative. How do you do that? So we put some fresh faces on that. Some individuals, we tell their stories. We bring that, we have hold audiences, maybe with, you know, state senators or assembly members, and we very gently show them this and bring these people to them, and without them knowing, brush their ego and just shame them by showing them what they're not acting on. Because they're up there and they're supposed to be serving us, you know, we the people. And that's the only thing I could really think of, like one opportunity to make something happen, just on that one point. I'm sure there's plenty of other options that we can put into place, but in the meantime, and when you think about it, at least I do, maybe the collective out there or the majority doesn't care, but it disturbs me, man. It brings tears to my eyes when I see homelessness like that, and I see people not treated properly in this great state of New York.
Give me 1 second. We'll come right back. Tracie, you want to address that, the issue of how we push back on dangerousness? And my wrap-up question is just, if there's one thing you want folks to walk away with, what is that?
That black and brown are crayons in the Crayola box. They're not people. I'm a human being. I bleed just like you bleed. I'm not black. See the color of my skin? This is black. That's what I'm going to change about. This is black. He's not white. Okay? This is white. So we're going to change that. Number one. Number two, the state of New York has too many coalition and grassroots organizations to where why do we lose our bills? Why we can't win nothing over the finish line? Too many grassroots coalitions from Buffalo to Brooklyn that do the same thing. Why not partner together and get stuff rolling? Everybody wants to stand up and be the one to say, I helped to do the housing. We all doing the housing. But we don't need all these different programs. That's crazy. And all these things, y'all ain't helping nobody, are you? No. So let's get together. Together as one. You ever seen the movie 300? They was killing them in 300, right? Yeah. Yeah. They were smart. They thought the same. They're alike. There's no black and brown. There's no color. Colors belong in a Crayola box. We're people. We're human beings. We want to get treated like that. And we want a house with a roof.
Thank you.
Technically a home.
Marcus, you had something to say, but also, if there's one thing that you want folks to walk away with, what would that be?
Okay, so one of the things I want folks to walk away with is that the people on this stage right now, we are in the business of problem solving. And so Picture the Homeless, along with their partners, New Economy, Nicely Land Initiative that Picture the Homeless helped create.
Bobby, can you hand them
Over the years, when I was advocating for more housing and land, homeless people went around the country talking about, do anybody in this room know anything about community land trust? No, I don't hear you. When I say, do anybody in this room know anything about community land trust? I want to say, community land trust. Do anybody in this room know anything about community land trust?
Yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, so Picture the Homeless and their partners partner up. There's a community land trust that's called Cooper Square. That's one of the oldest land trusts. But homeless people created a land trust in East Albarrio. And you know, so homeless people did that from New York and United States. So we created a board game to help New Yorkers to understand what community land trust is. So this is the board game that Picture the Homeless and their partners created. It gives you a little bit more on hands on what a community land trust is. So right now, we got a community land trust movement moving in New York City. We got folks in Chinatown. We got folks in Flushing, Queens, Far Rockaway, Brooklyn. We on the move, baby. We on the move. So
That's
the
what's
next
up.
question I wanted to say was that as far as with, what we was talking about before, that, with people coming home, trying to get housing, one of the biggest reasons why Picture the Homeless got in front of that at the time, because it was creating more homelessness, because people who was coming home from being mass incarcerated or being discriminated, where they gonna live? Where they gonna live? Who's gonna hire them? So a lot of times, Picture the Homeless members and people that was formerly homeless became ecological engineers. They started picking up the cans and bottles and putting them back into the system and getting paid. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. And that man said there's a board game, so that's dope. I want to see the board game. Just, Bobby, just one thing that you want to make sure. Oh, this is heavy. There's a lot of stuff in. No, this is dope. Where can we buy it, first of all? Where can we buy it?
Okay, so you're going to have to see my partners, the new economy.
Okay. All right.
So that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Bobby, just one thing you want to make sure folks leave away.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this too. But, one thing to remember, support equals hope. On just one of the ways that I operate is on an individual basis with the Clemency Collective. I have people in conversations over the phone, which you have to be careful about because they're incarcerated. They call you over the phone. We have individuals with death by incarceration sentences that were sentenced as teenagers, 17 years old, 19 years old, and now they included with that life without the possibility of parole. That means you don't have a chance, you're gone, you're thrown away, you're discarded. Your life is done. And they're just dwelling in there, and they're giving back, and they learned and did everything that they could do. And all they need is support. And we have to keep giving them hope that one day they might have the possibility to come home. And we can do this through legislation. If you go to rapcampaign.com, you'll see 2 bills that we're trying to introduce. And we've been struggling. We've been struggling and pushing for 10 years. So with that, we need that support to give people hope to save lives.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause for the panelists. I'm going to do just moderate's exception here. One, I just want to shout out my Deputy Public Advocate, John Francis, who's here. I saw they'll send you the form one. And for my former council days, I got to shout out Flatbush Tennis Coalition is in the house. So I appreciate it. But no, this is a great panel. I think, one, hopefully for people who haven't heard the stories of real people who are impacted, is important, as we mentioned, to lift folks up. Second, there's so many things that were talked here that can be its own panel, from shelters that resemble jails to a whole bunch of other things that can be its own panel. But my hope is that we walk away with understanding how this intersection really impacts everything. I did a lot of work around abuse, stop, question, frisk. People thought I was going to ask to be the public safety chair. I instead asked to be the housing chair because of how housing is connected to public safety. And if we don't know how housing is connected to health after this pandemic that we're still dealing with, we never will. And so it's really important that we keep these conversations going, and I hope you do that. Peace and blessings to you all. Love and light. Housing is a right. Fight, fight, fight. Thank you so much.
And you got it right there in your hand. And folks, while he's stepping out, Will is going to come out and we're going to switch out, but we know the public advocate has a very busy schedule, so he's got to leave. And so can we just give Jumaane a round of applause for us.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, it feels weird to be on the stage. It's been a while. Can we give a round of applause again for that powerful panel? For again, my name is Will. I'm a senior campaign organizer at ANHD, and I'm really great we were able to put this panel together. Before I was at ANHD, I was a grassroots organizer doing CrimJ work, so all of these groups on stage I've known in some way, either door knocking for parole justice, being at conference or convenings, or also doing cop watch in the subway with them. So Marcus, I remember when you had dreadlocks and we were doing cop watch in the subway. It's a great honor to introduce Jacob Cohen, the cellist. So a little bit about Jacob is he's a Brooklyn-based cellist, experimental cellist, instrument maker, visual artist, and educator. He began playing the cello in 1995, and over the years has developed a unique improvisational style that grew out of his days as a street performer in New York City. He brings the cello into non-traditional spaces and adapts the sound to fit any environment, putting performer and observer in a trance together that disrupts the routines of life and brings the focus to present. His music was featured in the 2014 film Foxcatcher, which was nominated for 5 Grammys. From 2014 to 2018, he ran a music program for youth incarcerated at Rikers. And we'll see, he actually did portraits of the youth, and we'll see it played in the background as Jacob performs. And he did over 500 portraits, and some of them were featured at the Queens Museum in 2018 in a solo show titled Dispatches from the Ghost Ship. In 2020, he and a group of activists founded the Free Prakash Alliance with the goal of getting murder charges against Prakash Truman, a youth from Queens, dropped. At the age of 15, Prakash had been accused of a murder in Queens he did not commit and interrogated for hours before making a false confession with no lawyer present. All charges against Prakash were dropped on June 6th of 2022. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jacob.
while I was working at Rikers. And housing, you know, was a huge issue for all of those kids, and it was really like one of the things that really determined like that they were there in the first place. But I was really happy to be able to show those drawings tonight. And you know, when I met Prakash like doing that program, who is the kid that we helped get free. And housing, you know, was one of the prerequisites to him even being allowed out on bail. So like, I think like, you know, safe housing, we had to raise money for his bail, which was like, we had to pay $15,000. And then we also raised another like $20,000, I think, for his housing, which he was able to have housing for a year and a half while he fought his second trial. So, you know, Will was a big help in that fight. And I just wanted to say, you know, thank you to him for inviting me to be here today. Thank you guys all for coming out, and you know, keep on fighting for housing for these kids, because like I said, it's just a prerequisite for them to be able to change their lives. So it's really good.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Can we give Jacob a round of applause, please? And you know, we tried to put a lot of thought into how we put this event together, also thinking about and knowing that it's a topic and a set of topics we don't always talk about together, that it's sensitive. So I know a lot of times we're used to panels where we finish and we do a bunch of Q&A. We intentionally didn't necessarily do that in this time. But people and a bunch of our speakers will be around for the reception, so encourage folks to go up and have conversations with them. Please be mindful and sensitive of if one of them corrects you or somebody in a conversation corrects you and says, I don't say criminal justice, I say mass incarceration. We don't say this, we use this. To just be mindful of that language and to make those adjustments, because we had people who were so kind, so vulnerable, so giving to share their real experiences with us, right? And I just, I want to say profoundly thank you to Marcus, to Bobby, and to Tracie, because you know they didn't necessarily ask to be doing this work. They're choosing to be doing this work because of their circumstances, because of their experiences, in a way that I think we, not just we in this room, but like we as New Yorkers, we as New York State, because Tracie's doing this all over the state, upstate, really oftentimes don't realize and don't appreciate. And you know, they are weaving the experience. I think Bobby started with the experience of the person that you saw that's sleeping on the street as you walk into a door, with the conversations that we're having around policies and dollars and practices and Albany and City Hall. And so it's really grounding to remember that these are not separate things, that they deeply connect. And so thank you all for sharing that. And Marcus, we will find the Trustville board game and make sure we get it up, so that folks can find it via our social media as well. Shout out to Cooper Square and a bunch of the other folks. Our Cooper Square is one of our longtime members and on the board, but thinking about how we create a different framework for folks. So we're gonna exit this room. There'll be a reception out in the front. I'm trying to hold on to Jacob's music in my head, so I encourage others to we wanted that to be a moment of reflection for folks to kind of absorb what they heard. Please have conversations, discussions with each other, with other folks here. We've got a lot of different people who do this work on the ground in different parts of New York City and across the state. And then you can go, can I do this right, Lauren and team? You can go up the stairs and to the right is one exhibit, and then you go back where you entered and where you checked in, that there's like a room where you see like a curved wall. If you go into there, both of those are part of the Making Time mass incarceration exhibits. So please, please, please make sure you take a moment to walk through them before you leave, because they're really beautiful and really powerful. So thank you everybody for coming today. Thank you, Bea. Thank you to our panelists, Jumaane, Jacob, and the team to put this together. So.